So we are getting very close to our first average frost, and I am working so hard to get all the things out of the garden, and if anything needs to be canned or put away. I'm starting here with some green beans that we planted for a fall crop, and I didn't get a lot of green beans this spring just because we were just so busy doing a lot of things, selling vegetables, and my husband was also working another job, and we just got a little bit of green beans canned this spring, but I wanted to go ahead and do a fall planting. So right here I am just going through here and trying to get these green beans canned up before our first frost hits. So what I like to do is I will harvest my green beans, and if I don't have a whole lot of time, I just take an old grocery brown paper bag and I will wash all of my green beans first and make sure they're all good and clean. I'll lay them out on a towel on my table. Sometimes I'll get out a fan and blow off all of the water, make sure they're completely dry before I store them into this brown paper sack. And then I will put this brown paper sack into my fridge for up to 2 days. I found that if you go more than 2 days, they start getting a little soggy. But I've done this many times throughout my years because I am just so busy that I can't just can green beans just whenever. So this works for me. Sometimes we can the same day when we harvest, but this video right here, I actually had these green beans in my refrigerator for 2 days. And this was actually a Wednesday, and we had church that night, so I was trying to get everything already snapped, ready to go before I had to go to church that evening. And I was just counting out how many jars I needed and how much green beans I could fit into each jar. It usually takes about 7 quarts to fill my canner, and I believe we got 7 quarts this evening, which is 7 more jars for our winter harvest. I was hoping that I would get a lot more to fill up my shelving, but I'm grateful for what I got. We actually got quite a bit, but we are a family of 6, so I like to make sure I stock up quite a bit just because we do have a big family, and I like to have stuff that lasts all winter long until the next season. So I just sitting here scrubbing up all of my lids and my jars. I like to put my jars into a preheated oven at 220 for 20 minutes, or I just keep it in there until I'm ready to can. It just sterilizes the jar and keeps them hot, and it helps them not get sudden shock whenever your liquid is going into your jars. I've always done it this way. It's easy for me. Some people like to put their jars into the canner water, but since we're pressure canning today, there's only about a couple inches of water in the bottom. I'm also cooking supper right now just because we do have church tonight and I'm trying to get all the things done. So my husband came home. He's helping me get everything into the canner while I get the rest of our dinner on the table, and we're trying to knock this out before we have to leave, which this was really pushing it for us. But the next morning we got 7 jars. They all sealed. I like to take the rings off of them. I remember my grandmother always got on to me for taking the rings off of my jars, but there's just no sense of having the rings on them, in my opinion. I know everybody's different, so but in our household we take them off, and then I will label all of them and store them away. Luckily, none of these are sticky. Sometimes I get liquid that seeps out of these jars and they're a little sticky, and I'll have to get a wet rag and wash them off, but they did pretty well. They're not that sticky, so I'm pretty excited about that. So green beans isn't really one of my favorite things to harvest and can, just because it takes so long to get all the process done. But I'm very grateful whenever winter rolls around and I actually have some vegetables to pull out for a side on our dinner. So you can see here coming up in the cabinet of this whole entire shelf. I was really hoping that I would get this whole thing filled this whole season, which I almost did, but it's just because we were busy. I'm really proud that we actually got this much from being busy, honestly. It's really cool too that my kids are at the age where they're really good helpers with snapping the green beans. They didn't actually snap the green beans this day, but they usually do, and it makes it go by so much quicker for me. I don't dread it as much when the kids help me, and that's going to be one of their fond memories in their childhood of snapping green beans. And that's one of my goals, is to teach my kids how to grow food. I really hope that they can carry this into their adulthood. So as we were collecting chicken eggs today, I wanted to show you guys, we did some work on the inside of our chicken house, and it was long overdue. And we just built these little boxes on the left side and then a roosting bars on the other side. And I just needed to make this more functionable for me and my family. So what was in here before, we just had a board that went all the way across the back side of this chicken house, and they had some boards on the bottom of this shelf. And I used to put hay or some pine chips up there, but it was just becoming a pain to clean out in all the grooves. And then same as on the floor, we actually had some grooves all on the floor. It was not a smooth floor. So when it came time to clean out this chicken house, it was so difficult to clean, just because I had to get a shovel in there and get into the nooks and crannies and clean it out really well, and just took forever. And I love this setup because I can literally take out these boxes, take it straight to my compost whenever they start getting dirty. So I have 2 boxes on the top shelf here, and there's actually a box on the very bottom. It's a really long, big box on the bottom. It's a little difficult to get out, but my plan is I'm going to go to, I think, Hobby Lobby and find some cheap handles and put some handles on the front of these boxes. And then on the bottom, I'll have to figure out where to put the handle on the bottom to where it's easy for me to slide it out. So I've already had to take out the bottom box every week to keep it clean, because the chickens like to roost down there on that little lip. And I'm trying to figure out how to prevent them from roosting down there, because it just makes a mess in that box, because they do like to lay in that bottom corner, some of them. So I need to figure out a solution to keep them from roosting right there. But the 2 top boxes actually stay pretty clean. I haven't really had to take them out to the compost, which has been great. And my eggs are super clean whenever they lay up on the top boxes. And when I started to use these boxes on the top shelf, I just put some fake wood eggs up there so they knew to jump up there and start laying, because they're always used to just laying on the floor. Even though we had that big long shelf in the back of the chicken house, they never really jumped up there to lay eggs. I don't know if it was just too tall, or I don't know. So the fake eggs actually worked really well. It taught them how to jump up to the top shelves and start laying. So I'm really hoping eventually all of them will start jumping up there, but they still like the bottom little corner. So I am so excited that this setup is going to stay way more cleaner for me to manage. And then the boys love to go collect eggs for me, so whenever they're collecting eggs, I don't have to worry about them getting, a mess on their hands all the time. And then obviously cleaning them, I like to pre-wash all of my eggs, so it won't be as difficult to keep my eggs clean as I store them. So I really enjoy baking and making breads. Not that long ago, I switched to making fresh milled flour bread, and I absolutely love it. I love the taste. It was a little hard to get used to because it's a lot heavier dough, but after practicing a lot, I actually feel like I've got a little bit of experience now and kind of know what works and what doesn't work. So how I learned about using fresh milled flour is my son actually was in the hospital last year with pneumonia, and that kind of just started a new health journey for my family I remember one night as I was in the hospital room with my son, I was just looking through my phone, and on YouTube popped up this video about fresh milled flour. And it wasn't until I got home from the hospital with my son that I actually watched this video that was 3 hours long. And it was a whole presentation on fresh milled flour, the health benefits, and nutrients, minerals, all the stuff that is really good for your body, and how flour that you buy in grocery stores is stripped of basically everything, and it doesn't give you any nutrients or anything like that. So I learned that whole grains, if you eat them whole, that's what really God intended your body to have, is the whole entire grain, not just part of it. So I saved up some money and bought me a grain mill because they're so expensive, but they are totally worth it. If you want to have good health, I highly recommend saving some money and buying a grain mill and starting this journey. So I use Sue Becker's bread recipe, and Sue Becker is actually the person that I learned all of this from. She has a YouTube video called Bread Beckers, and she actually has a store where she sells a bunch of her bread making supplies. And she also does videos on how to cook with fresh milled flour, so it's a really great resource to look into. There was a part in her 3-hour presentation that she talked about her kids when she switched to fresh milled flour, how her kids didn't hardly get sick anymore. So I loved that idea, because my kids do get sick, just like everybody else throughout the seasons. And if I could prevent them from getting sick all the time just by using fresh milled flour, just because it has all the nutrients that your body needs in it, I was on board, because I did not want my son going back to the hospital with pneumonia. That's probably the most scariest thing that I experienced with him. And he is my oldest son, and he has Down syndrome, so it just made it that much more uneasy for me as a mother. So I absolutely love this bread recipe. I actually had to play around with it quite a bit, because her recipe doesn't really work for the area that I live in. I live in a totally different state than she does, so I had to play around with how much flour I use, and it's always going to be different. I just have to eyeball whenever I put the flour into my mixer, and just watch my mixer on how much flour I need to add into there. So that's the only difficult thing, is you have to know how to make bread and kind of just feel and see how your bread feels, because in different season, like winter and summer, are going to be totally different whenever you make your bread, because of the moisture in the air and how cold and hot it is. So this bread turned out amazing. We eat this sandwich bread all the time now, and I use this sandwich bread to make these rolls for our dinner here. So I actually have something planned that I am going to do at our home, and I think I'm going to either start it this fall or next year, and I'm so excited. I've had this idea in my mind for many, many, many years, and it's finally coming to life. I just wanted to make sure that I knew how to grow a garden and how to bake all of this bread and do all the things. I wanted to have experience before I opened what I'm going to do on our farm. So stick around. I will probably talk about that in the next couple videos, but thank you guys so much for watching today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you guys soon.